And CS Keriako Tobiko has called on rich countries to increase funding to developing countries to tackle climate change as global heads of state convene for a two-day summit at the start of the UN's COP26 climate conference. The need for greater investment in climate adaptation activities across Africa is what President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to assert as he joins global leaders with different meetings planned over the next coming days. It is another opportunity for the president to talk up his climate agenda on the global stage. Calvin Kodalo has compiled that story.
In global cities for negotiations to address the main problems behind dangerous climate change, on its 25th year, the United Nations Conference on Climate Change is taking place in Glasgow, Scotland, with major leaders including United States President Joe Biden and Host Prime Minister Boris Johnson expected to take part in the conference. This year's conference aims to get countries to commit to ambitious carbon emission reduction targets by the year 2030 as part of efforts to ensure that global carbon emissions plummet to an extent that the amount of emissions produced is not more than the amount that can be offset. However, Kenya and Africa's attention will be zeroed in on climate change adaptation financing, which has been a sticking point since the first conference dubbed the Kyoto Protocol in 1997. Africa is responsible for just over 3% of the carbon emissions that are blamed for much of the damage that has led to global warming and precipitated extreme weather and climate events, including floods and drought, which affect agricultural productivity across a continent for which farming is a key source of food and livelihood. It is estimated that 2 million people on the continent are dealing with starvation that has been exacerbated by climate change. African delegations will be seeking concrete financing plans from the United States, the European Union and China, who are collectively responsible for about 60% of global carbon emissions, to go towards green economy projects meant to curb global climate change.
Adaptation has to also be matched with adaptation finance. Right? Kenya has been struggling, like most other African countries, developing countries that are the least emitters, struggling to mobilize its own internal resources. And there has not been, and this I'm sure will be evident shortly as we begin tough negotiations. There's the developed countries who are actually the largest, the biggest emitters, and bear the greatest responsibility, are not doing their job, they're not doing their part. They are not supporting us in terms of finances, in terms of technology and capacity. And so priority for us is adaptation and adaptation finance. I'm sure you've been hearing about the $100 billion pledge or obligation or commitment. That's which was delivered, which that pledge was made in 10 years ago. And would have been delivered by, actually the developed countries were required to have delivered that $100 billion per year by 2020. You just do the calculations. But that never happened. By 2020 came and passed. And now what we have, and is going to be a key issue here for at the political level, I'm sure our president will be has been speaking about it very strongly. What we are now.
In 2009, at that year's United Nations Climate Conference in Copenhagen, the rich nations made a significant pledge, promising to channel $100 billion every year to less wealthy nations by 2020 to help them adapt to climate change and mitigate further rises in temperature. That promise has not been kept, and Kenya, alongside other African nations, will be pressing on that matter. In addition, the Kenyan delegation are also keen to talk up Kenya's commitment to the green economy, particularly with 70% of Kenya's installed electricity capacity coming from renewable energy sources. Calvin Kodalo, Lookup TV, Nairobi.
Thank you, Kodalo, for that report. Now, the High Court in Eldoret